dear viewers, and welcome to a new edition of our program Africa Today. Mahisi Rabia. In this episode, we'll be shedding light on President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's meeting with the President of the African Development Bank, AFDB, and his accompanying delegation. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi met with the President of the African Development Bank, Akinwumi Adesina, and his accompanying delegation. The spokesman for the presidency, Councillor Ahmed Fahmy, said the President welcomed the development of cooperation between Egypt and the African Development Bank and expressed appreciation for the bank's role in supporting the development sectors in Africa, particularly in light of the growing economic challenges at the international level. More details in the following story.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi met with the President of the African Development Bank Group, Akaimo Adensia, and his accompanying delegation, which included Vice President of the bank, Kevin Orama, and Secretary General of the bank, Vincent Nimihil. The meeting was attended by the Governor of the Central Bank of Egypt, Hassan Abdullah, Deputy CBE Governor Rami Abul Naga, and Sub-Governor for the Foreign Relations Sector, Minna Farid. Presidency spokesperson Ahmed Fahmy said President al-Sisi welcomed the development of cooperation between Egypt and the African Development Bank. al-Sisi expressed appreciation for the AFDB's role in supporting the development sectors in Africa, particularly in light of the growing economic challenges at the international level. He also affirmed that Egypt looked forward to continuing and increasing cooperation with the African Development Bank in the coming period in various areas within the framework of the common strategic goals between the two sides. The President of the African Development Bank lauded Egypt's development experience over the past few years, describing it as a source of great inspiration for African people across the continent, and adding that the Egyptian people and the political leadership have demonstrated a great capacity for rapid advancement and accomplishment of many important achievements. He noted the achievements made across many development sectors, mainly electricity, water treatment, and the development of unplanned residential areas as illuminating examples of models development program benefiting large segments of the population. Adenisia said he was pleased that Egypt would host the bank's annual meetings in Sharm el-Sheikh in May. The meeting would focus on encouraging continental economic integration as well as mechanisms to close the African continent climate finance gap. President al-Sisi expressed Egypt's full support for the bank and its annual meetings and affirmed Egypt's constant interest to promote the interests of Africa in all its forms and all levels.
To shed light on the issue, we are very much delighted to be joined over the phone by Dr. Mohamed Roshdy, the economic and banking expert and lecturer at Cairo University. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Mohamed.
Hello, good afternoon for you and our audience.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Sir, President al-Sisi expressed appreciation for the African Development Bank's role in supporting the developmental sector in Africa, particularly in light of the growing economic challenges at the international level. First, let's talk in general about the economic development in Africa, which we did see recently.
Actually, while I'm talking about Africa, it comes to top of my mind the potentiality of this continent. Actually, as you know, and our audience, Africa, they are calling Africa the youth continent. Actually, due to, as you know, and our audience, that the pyramid, the age of pyramid in Africa, which is the majority, like 60 or 70% from the entire population, are youth. Despite the fact the European countries, the pyramid is inverted. For that reason, a lot of countries and a lot of developed countries are focusing in Africa. As you know, and our audience, this is a good market to sell their commodities and to focus to invest on this continent, actually. And this is one of the most important and crucial things. And by the way, the presidential leadership is focusing to have a strategic partnership and let Egypt play its historical role in this continent. And this is one of the most important things. And in my humble opinion, this is calculated to our presidential leadership to focus on our continent and to have an influencer role in this country, in this continent.
Yes, indeed. Sir, the president of the African Development Bank lauded Egypt's development experience over the past few years, describing it as a source of the great inspiration for the African peoples across the continent. How do you view Egypt's leading role in the African continent in the different domains?
Actually, there are a lot of agreements concerning Africa, and Egypt has a significant role on it, especially the AFCFTA agreement. AFTA agreement is merging, as you know, and our audience, 54 African countries, as far as I recall, of 1.3 billion people, which is combined by GDP 3.4 trillion. And this is one of the most important things to focus on it. As you know, and our audience, the main driver nowadays for our globe, which is the economical part, and to focus on this, Egypt actually is playing a significant role on this part. The agreements, they are trying to support all African countries and to have an influencer role. Addition to, the presidential leadership is doing it in a smart way.
Sir, Egypt has recently signed several bilateral and regional free trade agreements as part of a comprehensive program to boost the exports and increase the access to the global market. Can you shed more light on these agreements?
One of the most important things that our country and our government is focusing on to enhance our financial resources and to be more independent. One of the most important initiatives that the government is trying to do to have to increase actually our exports, non-petroleum exports, as far as I recall, to reach $100 billion. And this is one of the most crucial things that will leverage our economy and will help Egypt to be ranked as one of the most competitive countries in Africa. In my humble opinion, this initiative led a lot of industries to boost actually the productivity. And this possibly reflected on our GDP structure. And this came through a lot of trade agreements with African countries to export and a lot of import and export agreements actually, and to focus on the export part is one of the most important things to achieve our strategic goal to have 100 billion non-petroleum exports. Actually, this will be one of the most important things. And if we would like to start to achieve this strategic vision, we have to start with our neighborhood, the African countries. And this is what the presidential leadership is focusing on.
Yes. Sir, would the African countries actually lower both their import and export to Europe and Asia and work on improving the Made in Africa products?
In my humble opinion, we have a great competitive edge in our continent, the African continent, Especially, we have a lot of handmade products and a lot of industries and agriculture part. We have a lot of treasure in our country. And as you know, and our audience, any country GDP structure is consisted of three main things: the industrial part, the agricultural part, and the service part. The most added value part, which is the service part, including the technology part. And nowadays, the African continent, they would like to enhance the GDP structure by increasing the service part. So they are trying to attract more FDI and invest in infrastructure to get more investors, especially in the part of technology which has the highest added value. By this way, we will have a competitive edge to increase our export and decrease our imports and be more independent. And nowadays we can see easily that we are exporting to Asia, to some European countries, and I believe and I do trust the African leadership that one day our products will be the majority of products that will be displayed in the European countries and the American countries.
Actually, do you agree, sir, that Africa is a promising market for Egypt in the current period, while the Egyptian market is a window for Europe to access the African market as well?
In my humble opinion, Africa is a potential country. As I told you previously and our audience, we have, they are calling Africa youth continent. For that reason, the majority of European countries, they are finding way out to sell their commodities in Africa. For that reason, they are focusing on this potential market, which has the highest potentiality in coming years. So, a lot of developed countries are focusing to sell their commodities in Africa, and this is, I can say, it's a good opportunity. For African population or African citizens to have a lot of internal agreements to enhance their commodities and to get other agreements to sell their products in the European countries also.
Yes. Actually, sir, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi earlier stressed on the importance and actually the need for boosting the entrepreneurship among the African nations. How can startups, which is now the talk of everybody globally, drive economic growth, especially in Africa?
In my humble opinion, the incoming years, the most important things to build any country to have SMEs, small and medium enterprises, which is actually depend on entrepreneurs. So entrepreneurship should be boosted and be encouraged by all the governments. Simply to simplify this thing to the concept for our audience. Actually, if you would like to have a stronger economy, despite the fact there are, for example, you have 2 or 3 companies. Let me simplify it. 2 companies, and that they having like 100% of the economy of the country activities. If any one of them defaulted, what will happen? We will lose like 50% of our economy. But if we have a lot of companies, we are diversifying the risk, and the economy will be potential. In addition to this, will let us have a strong economy. So there is a great initiative to support the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Those will be the future of the African continent.
From your point of view, Dr. Roshdy, what are the challenges mainly facing the entrepreneurs and the startup in developing countries and in Africa in particular?
To be honest with you, there are a lot of challenges. One of them, the financing challenge. And a lot of governments are trying to design or tailor programs for entrepreneurs to finance them. Especially nowadays, there's a focus on microfinance also, and focusing on the journey of the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
To let them be one day one of the huge companies that focusing
Yes,
that the economy is focused on them, and in addition to the regulation.
Yes.
The regulation is part of this, and a lot of countries working on this and giving them tax incentives.
Yes,
Like
indeed.
Egypt, we did this great initiative, and we are simplifying the process here in Egypt. For example, the presidential leadership approved to have a golden license to
indeed.
establish any company.
Yes, indeed, Dr. Mohamed Roshdy, our economic and banking expert and lecturer at Cairo University. Thank you so much for your precious input. And at least 21 people have been killed in southern Somalia after torrential rains triggered flash floods that have caused